Well, first of all, as far as the nuclear issue is concerned, setting aside the very high probability that Mr. Zelensky is mentally unbalanced or worse, he's mentioned these things in the past. He actually talked about preemptive nuclear strikes before the Russians intervened on the 24th of February. It's one of the reasons that Putin felt obligated to make it clear what Russia would do in the event that a nuclear weapon was used against it. Because the Russians have made it abundantly clear that they regard nuclear weapons as purely retaliatory. That is to say, unless someone attacks them with a nuclear weapon, they have no intention of using them, and they don't need them. The second point is this nonsense about Russia is losing, the world is ending, and hundreds of miles are being retaken. It's all nonsense, and it's tragic because it's gotten to the point beyond absurdity. Today, the Ukrainians tried to circulate a video in which they showed allegedly Russian troops surrendering to them. In reality, it was staged. Everyone was Ukrainian, and they simply gave the other side Russian flags and tried to create that illusion. The truth is that Mr. Zelensky's remarks made to an audience in Australia are unambiguous evidence for Ukraine's impending destruction. Ukraine is being bled white. They've had at least 100,000 dead now, perhaps 300,000 wounded at least. These little counterattacks that they have been launching that have gained a few miles here or there have cost them tens of thousands of lives. And the gains are superficial, to be frank, meaningless, and in fact, many of these have already been reversed. But I think the Western news media, along with the governments in the United States and the United Kingdom in particular, are working overtime to try and create this image of a Ukraine fighting back that is simply misleading. And in the meantime, the Russians, who never used more than 20% of their ground force in southern Ukraine, have been running an economy of force mission down south. Essentially, you've got about 50,000 Russian and allied troops. Most of these are not regular army from the Russian military. They are various formations of volunteers, mercenaries, allied units such as the Chechens, and they've done a brilliant job, frankly, of throwing back all these counteroffensives. And all of this is because the Russians are planning on a major offensive once the ground freezes, and they're building up for that. And they're also hoping that with these losses that the Ukrainians may suddenly come around to realizing that they're doomed. But obviously that's not the message that we're getting here in the United States through the mainstream media, nor is it popular in Western Europe. But nevertheless, it's true. And for those of us who bother to dig for the truth, you can find it. It's hard, but it can be done. And the sources I have make it abundantly clear that Russia is by no means in retreat, and it's certainly not losing.